Jay here, Stretford, Paddock. That's Joe Smith. West Ham United won. Manchester United won. The Reds stay undefeated under Michael Carrick, right? That's the real quiz. We're still undefeated. It's a little bit bittersweet in it because it's annoying we didn't get the win. We've been winning all the games under Michael Carrick this time round. And you think, yeah, the momentum's with us. But to get a late equaliser and such a quality goal from Benjamin Sesko, I can't be too down. Get involved in the chat in the comments and let us know what you think about that game, what you thought about the performance, what you think about everything. Joe, that was our second game in 4 days, and I felt like it showed. It was inarguably our worst performance under Michael Carrick so far. Yeah. It just, a lot of players just looked, if I'm being kind, just looked a bit leggy. Yeah, I think in particular, Shaw, Ahmad were off the pace. Bruno wasn't his usual self, but I think still offered a bit more than those two just because his, basically his floor is so high, isn't it? Even when he's having a bad game, yeah, I agree.
He'll
with
do half a dozen things that he's the only one on the pitch that can do it, but he wasn't at his best. I thought Casemiro last 20 minutes looked a bit knackered as well, even though again he still had a decent game overall. And Burmo couldn't quite get into the game. Same with Gunya. And you know what? I do actually think West Ham approached the game in the right way, and we said it in the first few minutes. They just went for this mid-block. They completely packed out the midfield. And the thing that we've done so well in our game so far, especially against Tottenham, obviously with 10 men, we saw the compilations and the little clips from all the games under Carrick so far, is this really lovely, intricate passing football. The quick, it's not sort of Pep Guardiola style two-touch sort of tappy stuff that never goes anywhere. It's been really penetrative, good, first time, runs off the ball, X, Y and Z. And then what West Ham did is went, right, well, we're just going to put a man every 2 square metres across the middle of the pitch with 12 people in there and stop you doing it. And they did a really good job of that. It meant that we couldn't play those intricate 1-2s, and if we did, you'd have to make, the pass would have to be even more difficult than it would have been anyway. They never got stretched. We'll notice, I don't know the numbers, but I'm sure we can, see them at some point. The passing stats, I would be stunned if anyone other than Lisandro Martinez and Maguire until he came off didn't dominate, or anyone other than them dominated the passing numbers. It felt like most of the game, our centre-backs had the ball, and then there was 20 players and then their goalkeeper. That was essentially how it felt to me. Obviously, I ain't got the sort of player-by-player passing stats there, but that's essentially a lot of what we watched, and I thought that was a good way to slow us down, and it did slow us down, and it meant that we couldn't be as dynamic, we couldn't be as sort of detailed as we normally have been, and I think that fair play to West Ham for doing that. However, what I will say is, if you can play poorly, if you can not be at your best and still get a result away from home against a team I think we've lost to 3 times in a row away from home, who have won 4 of their last 5, who are, yes, they're one of the worst teams in the league on paper, but they're in their best run of form of the whole year, then I think that's a decent sign as well. Play badly and don't lose, I'll take that.
Yeah, just on some stats. I've got a stat for Martinez here. 108 passes attempted, 100 completed, 100% aerial duels won, 16 passes into the final third, 9 ball recoveries, no fouls. That turned in his own box. That's from Statman Dave. Yeah, sort of backing up the point you were making. The Hatton 93 has been a member of the Academy for 62 months. Thanks for your support. Says today of all days was the time to start Sesko. By the time he came on, the game had already got away from us. Still undefeated, so not too disheartened. UTFR. I think hindsight, I'm not going to lie, I kind of got it sticking with the same team. I know you can look at it and go, second game in 4 days, should he have mixed it up a little bit? But I don't think anyone played particularly badly against Spurs, where you probably looked at it and thought, look, I'm going to stick with this team because this team is doing well and playing well. I think maybe he could have brought on Sesko a little bit earlier, but what was it, 69 minutes he brought him on? And you consider we had 7 minutes of injury time as well. It's almost half an hour. It's not too shabby. And look, it's all lives and buts and maybes. The fact is he brought Sesko on and he got a very good goal, and more power to him. And I think if we can take 2 big positives from today, Sesko getting a goal, which is good. He's on a good run, Sesko. I think that's like 4 in his last 5 games, whatever it is. It might even be 4 in his last 4. So he's doing really well. You looked as well at Lenny Yoro, who came on and thought made some good tackles. Yeah, and he's probably going to replace Maguire if Maguire's got a hamstring injury, because I don't think he's going to do a Bruno Fernandes and be ready in about 4 days, because that's just ridiculous. It's only Bruno that does that. So I think he's gonna be out for the next couple of games at least. So Lenny Yoro coming on and having probably his best game this season. I don't mean to be melodramatic. I know it was only half an hour, but he did very, very well. I think he's just what we needed. Let me know what you think. PJB World 200 says, anyone who thought going away to an informed West Ham was going to be easy is deluded. With a front four that didn't turn up, a draw is a fantastic result. David B says, West Ham can't defend crosses and we refuse to put any into the box. Sesko scored and Xerxes nearly scored from 2. Why didn't we do that more often is mad. Yeah, it was a little bit frustrating. We didn't do that more often and a bit sooner. United unbeaten in 9. Sesko world-class finish. All drowned out by the stupid haircut gimmick. Sick of the circus around the club, says Harshbald. 251. He's had enough of Frank and his Barnett.
Just on the crossing thing, and admittedly, Sesko being on earlier would have helped us be more successful from crosses. I do get that. But if you think back, Luke Shaw got one cleared off the line from a cross. Casemiro had a goal disallowed from a cross.
Yep.
Then Xerxes headed wide from a cross, and Sesko headed kicked the ball in from a cross. So it wasn't as though we didn't do it. In the first half we had a goal, not a goal, one cleared off the line. So maybe we could have done it a bit more. But I think one of the biggest issues was the poor crossing into the box. And then obviously secondary to that was at times a lack of presence in there, which was helped by Sesko coming on. And again, maybe could have come on a bit earlier. But I do think we saw it as a possible strength and tried to exploit it. I think at times that the balls in just weren't very good.
Yeah, I agree. It was one of those games where you could see certain things just didn't quite come off for us. And I don't like to use luck because we weren't great today. I'm not saying that. But, that offside is centimetres.
Yeah.
Like, it is genuinely centimetres. There's just those little things like...
tip of his knee.
Yeah, like little things like that can go either way. And I think had we got that equaliser early doors, or what was relatively early in the second half, I feel like we could have gone on and got a winner because West Ham's heads would have dropped like they did late on in that game. I think had that equaliser came even in the 90th minute rather than 92nd or whatever it was, 94th, sorry, we would have had a real good chance of getting a winner. Because even then we had one more chance, didn't we, where Ahmad went through. And I was a bit disappointed. Jack Stevens says, need the boys to get their heads back in against Everton. Can't carry on. Sorry, I've unclipped that. My bad. Need the boys to get their heads back in it against Everton. Can't carry on losing points in the bottom second half. Loads of different people. A lot of people having a go at a few players here. And I almost feel like Ahmad's getting some grief. I don't think he was great today. And Bumo getting a bit of flack. Luke Shaw getting a bit of flack. I feel like I can sympathise with a lot of these players. Now, look, these players who have been playing well. Like, I think every game under Carrick, we've played well. And we've been playing one game a week. And then you play on the Saturday and then you play on the Tuesday for the first time in months. Yeah. Then I think it was just a little bit of fitness. I think the players just looked a little bit leggy. To me, that's what I think it was. And I think when you are a bit goosed, and it's one of those where if you're not used to it and you've not rotated, and maybe Carrick should have rotated. I know hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I think that's what affected us today. I don't think it was necessarily that these players just didn't care or whatever. I think they just, maybe the 2 games in that short space of time when you're not used to it was a bit of an issue. I mean, I'm not excusing it completely because we should have been better even so, but that seems to make a little bit more sense to me than some of the stuff I'm seeing floating around. Ann L says, appalling performance, literally terrible. He's having none of it. To be honest, you have to give credit to West Ham United for making it so dull and stopping us from playing, says Gazaroo. People saying, how can you sympathise with Luke Shaw? He's been average at best for years, says Siddiqui Traore.
That's not true.
I mean,
when
it's easy to have a go at Luke Shaw because he was at fault for the goal. Yeah. And as Ronnie said on the watch along, a lot of the joy West Ham were getting was down their right, down our left. So it wasn't one of his better games. But I don't think it's all on Luke Shaw that. I think, to be honest with you probably had one player too many who didn't quite turn up today. Yeah. I think if you've got
Luke Shaw being one of them, obviously. But
I think if you've got say 2 or 3 players that don't turn up and 8 that do, with the quality we've got compared to West Ham, I think we win it. I think when you're looking at it and you're going, it's not quite happening for him. Delo looks knackered. Shaw's not playing well. Bruno's quiet for a big chunk of that game. And Bumo's not really been in it. And so I know he got the assist, but it's like, he had a bit of a quieter game. Cunha had a quiet game by his standards. When you throw all that in, all of a sudden it makes it hard. Then, of course, I mean, the injury to Maguire wasn't that fatal, if you can use that word, because Yoro came on and did very well. Yeah. And I think he found himself in some situations where if he hadn't been so good, West Ham could have got that second, we'd have lost. The tackle that he made on Callum Wilson, where he was sort of making sure that the I think he was still looking over his shoulder to make sure the pass wasn't on, and tracking Wilson, and then he times it when Wilson's trying to get his shot off. I thought was very good. Heaven Soul says fullbacks was absolutely poor. Dalot and Shaw were just comedy of errors and head scratchers. Ross Murphy says, I'm going to say it, the referee was awful all game. Therm D says, take the draw, but our whole front four were poor tonight.
I do think, I know not to repeat myself, but I do think the way West Ham approached the game is a big part of that. I think one of the things that United really struggle against is, I know when people think of or myself included, at times when you think of having a lot of possession, you assume the other team is sat on the edge of their own box, just nodding them away, proper deep lying inside your own 18-yard box, sort of low block stuff. But we had a lot of possession today, but West Ham weren't constantly inside their own box. They like I said before, it was this sort of mid-block, and that's something we've really struggled against for years. Yeah. When you can't sort of maximise Bruno Fernandes, it's an attempt to take him out of the game. When you look at the way that United played through Tottenham and played through Arsenal and found gaps in between the lines, if you just have enough players in the middle, there are no in between the line gaps. The gaps are so tight and so small, and I think that's how they neutralise basically our front five. I think that it's not a coincidence that Cunha and Burmo, Ahmad and Bruno all look tired on the same day. Yeah. I think that obviously, like we said, yes, they all are playing their second game in 4 days, which is a contributing factor. But I also think that it is down to the fact that they came up with a game plan to stop what we're good at, which is they are brilliant between the lines. Right, there are no lines. And we are going to have players across the whole centre of the pitch in a band that's about 10 metres wide. There's going to be 22 players in it, or 18 players in it, and we're not going to let them play. And I think, in fairness to West Ham, and like I said before, I think that is a weakness that we've got, and especially when our wide areas aren't quite as strong, and when you are relying on your fullbacks, which again I think is why we saw Dalot and Shaw look poor, because we had to rely on them a lot more because the centre of the pitch was so bogged down. And then you go, actually, Dalot's crossing isn't that reliable, and Luke Shaw does look a bit slow at times on the ball, and the whole game just sort of ground to a halt. But I think a lot of it was because our main number one way of playing was essentially cut off by West Ham. So it's good that we managed to do more. Maybe we should have resorted to a plan B a bit quicker. Maybe getting Sesko on a bit quicker would have been good. But I think it's something that United need to look at, and Carrick and his coaches need to look at. When teams do this sort of mid-block against us, how are we going to play out? Because there was a lot of times where I thought United struggled to even get to the edge of their box. So, there was a point between the sort of 85th minute and our goal where for most of it, the ball was in our half and we were passing it around and they'd win it back and then we'd try again. And, it was so boggy. It wasn't just constant pepper in the box. So I think, that's going to be an interesting thing to look forward to if other teams start replicating what West Ham did and cutting everything out in the middle. How do we sort of break that down? How do we approach that? Will be a good test for Carrick and the rest of the coaching staff, I think.
No, I agree with that. Also, I think looking ahead to next season, if we are going to have European football and hopefully Champions League football, today's a little reminder, you need a bigger squad. You do. I know we had options, and he brought on Xerxes, and he brought on Sesko, obviously got the equaliser, and he brought on Lenny Yoro, who did very well. But it's a little bit of a reminder there, I think, that we do need to strengthen, because let's not forget as well, we're going to lose Casemiro, who I agree with you, I thought he played quite well for a big chunk of that game. So you need to replace him, and we need more bodies anyway. So I think that's a little reminder about the need, if we are going to have 2 games a week, and we've had a small taste of it, that we need to strengthen in the summer massively. And I don't even think it's a case of you lose, Casemiro and Ugarte and you replace them. I think you need to add to that. You need to have more players available next season than you've got this season.
I completely agree. I think, I almost don't want to say, I don't want to just criticise Xerxes just because he's probably leaving anyway and all that, but so often, or too often, Xerxes comes on and is worse than the player we replaced. And today I thought he tries his best and he does some good things, but there was one point where was it Bruno with someone on the left anyway, brilliant little bit of sort of footwork, managed to play a pass to Xerxes, and it was Lisandro Martinez, and played the pass to Xerxes, and Xerxes half a step slow on it, which means that he's stretching for his first touch when it was very controllable, which means his second touch is a tackle, and the ball got bobbled between two and it went out for a West Ham throw. And you think a sharper, quicker, more switched on player there opens his body up, takes the touch, and we are running forward with 3 or 4 men across their back line. And even the header, which I know on one hand you would say it's good that he got there and well done, but how often does he get there and then not score it?
Yeah,
it's all
record,
the time.
And I think it spoke for itself. I know he didn't start many games, but he was it 230 days he went without a goal.
Yeah.
Until was it the Palace game?
Last season he had like 40 odd appearances, and I think he scored 3 or 4 goals.
You know, if we are going to kick on, if we are going to be serious about challenging for titles eventually, getting into the Champions League, being competitive in the Champions League, then, and I'm not just hating on Xerxes, because like you said, Joe, there's other players that need to take a look at themselves. Is he the quality that you've got? Is he good enough? Does he put... And it's not just about numbers, but numbers matter. You need attackers to, at some point, get you goals and assists. And his numbers are shocking. And I don't want to dig him out, because it's not all his fault, but Ronnie said it on the watch-along. It was like he looked like he'd been playing longer than everyone else when he came on. He looked... And I know sometimes you can come on to a game where it's quite frenetic, and it takes you 5 minutes to get into the pace of the game. We've seen that time and time again with players far better than Joshua Xerxes. But it happens a lot with him when he comes on and it's like quite slow and almost lethargic. And he plays in this languid style like we're 3-0 up, which is all well and good if we are 3-0 up. But when you're not and you're chasing the game, you're thinking, is he that guy? Now, I do feel that we're in this sort of strange sort of period in United at the minute where Cheeto is not ready. I think we all know that. I think last season he wasn't ready and he got thrown in because needs must. Sesko's your only out-and-out number 9. Xerxes is kind of this 9.5, 10 type player. Players like, obviously Lacey wasn't in the squad today, players like Lacey, like Fletcher, other attacking youngsters are probably a little bit, not quite there yet. So you're almost, for want of a better expression, stuck with Xerxes for now. But I do expect him to move on in the summer, and I do think we'll bring in someone with a little bit more quality and who's a little bit more effective.
I think we do need another striker. And I think, like I said, you don't want to single someone out and criticise them overly and basically say he needs to go in the summer. But I think that it sort of goes under the radar. Everyone knows a couple of midfielders, maybe a full-back, maybe a sort of a centre-back as well, depending on what happens with Maguire. But I think another striker is absolutely crucial. Yeah. Whether it's the 30-year-old who doesn't expect to start every week, or whether it's someone who wants to challenge Sesko, whatever you want to do, when we're in need of a goal, you bring Xerxes on, and like I said, too often he looks less likely to score than the person that you brought off. Yeah,
you can't just have one out-and-out striker. No. Like, Sesko's your only striker. I'm going to get in some of the comments, and then I'm going to get you on Sesko and his goal, because I don't think we've spoken about it enough. David says, I don't know if I've read this, but I read it again. West Ham were really good defensively, to be honest, kudos. Antel of the House L says, switch play quickly, did it once and scored. Full-time Productions says, the pace we approached the game was terrible. Hands up for the Panther. Same again, lads. Born in Old Nuno, awful club, awful manager. Part of the bus like a coward. How can he sleep at night? Ban him from the Premier League, he's a coward.
Love that.
Obviously, absolutely true. Stegibon has been a member of the Academy for 61 months, says Sesko should have started. Big strikers are the antidote to low blocks. And I've just got a couple of quotes before we'll get into Benjamin Sesko. Carrick says, West Ham, they made it difficult for us. Big credit to the boys. When we needed a late goal, it's a good quality to have. We'll take it and move on. Sesko saying the right things. He says, I'm happy with my finish, but I'm not happy with the draw. Sesko, it's been a bit of a difficult time for Sesko this season. Right? He came in with a big price tag. Obviously doesn't always start, didn't always start under Ruben Amrim, hasn't always started under Michael Carrick, has scored a few goals of late, but there was a spell where he'd gone a few games where he wasn't scoring, and he got a sort of back-to-back goals did he, in the Premier League, and then he had another big sort of gap between his next goals, and people question him. You had people like Gary Neville and others sort of saying, is he good enough and all the rest of it. Today, that finish was a reminder of why Benjamin Sesko was brought to Manchester United, why he was one of the most sought after strikers in Europe, and also why he's, and I'm not trying to dig anyone out, but some of the nonsense I've seen, why he's better than Rasmus Højlund. Like, that is just a goal from a striker who is in the top, sort of at the very, very top level, and to come on and to sort of execute the finish he did, which was sort of almost impossible for most players. I think he deserves his flowers. Yeah,
I think he's going under the radar at the moment because obviously he's not starting games, but he's scoring goals. Like you said, was it 4 in his last 5?
Something like that, yeah, because he got a brace, didn't he, against Burnley. He got the winner against Fulham, and then he scored tonight the equaliser against... Jesus Christ, already forgotten who we played tonight. Which, you got to remember as well, that's 4 points, or 3 points he saved us, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because that winner against Fulham and that equaliser tonight, these are big goals. These aren't just sort of stat padding, as the kids say. These are goals that have mattered. Even, look at the goals against Burnley as well. You need that point could be important. So he's turning up when we need him, isn't he?
Yeah, that's one of the best finishes of the season, that from Sesko. When you look at where he is when the ball comes in, he's just in front of the near post, which is always a difficult position to be in because it basically means you can't see the goal as the ball's coming to you. So you're kind of going on instinct to a certain degree. The second thing is the man is right on him. There's no margin for error. He's not got time to sort of lead up and take a slow down step so he can swing and really control his foot. He's got to do it as he's running because he's being marked so tightly. And then is the ball bouncing or is it just as it's landing? To catch it the way he does and to get it, essentially, he just sort of kind of flips it into the top corner. There's not a lot of pace on it. He uses all the pace from the cross, but just guides it so perfectly above the goalkeeper's hand. In terms of difficulty rating, I think obviously anyone that's ever played football knows how difficult that finish is because it doesn't look that fancy, but it's when you add all the pieces together, and then like you said, you add on the fact that this is the 94th minute and United need to get a goal to salvage it, and you've got that extra pressure on things. Like I said, it's as good a finish as there's been this season in the Premier League. Phenomenal from him, and I think he'll probably, we'll see if he starts the next game. Obviously, at some point he'll probably be thinking, what have I got to do to get a goal, to get a start here? I keep getting goals. But I like him, and I also think we need to sort of reframe what strikers cost and the expectations of them for that money. Strand Larsen has just gone to Crystal Palace for 50 million quid. And what
the fuck is that about, by the way?
I mean,
let's just get back to reality here. I know he scored, was it 15 goals last season? I think he's got 1 in 24 so far this season.
Yeah.
I mean, really? Someone in the chat has just put, by the way, Sesko cost 66 million quid. For reference, Ilanga cost Newcastle 50 million. Lockers cost Arsenal 63 million. Laughing emojis or smiling emojis. That's Magaze. Jay and Joe's adopted son Benjamin says West Ham earned their stripes today, innit, Joe?
Yeah, very true. They earned my stripes at least. But yeah, I think Sesko's a good player. And I think that he'll keep improving, and he's another case of, at the moment, I think his natural size and athleticism is keeping him up to speed roughly with the physicality of the Premier League, but I expect another jump next season once he's had a year of the athleticism, the size, but then also the aggression that you need in this league. If you can learn a bit more of that, I think we've got a 15 to 25 goal a season type Premier League goals, that is, striker on our hands eventually. But the more goals that he scores, obviously, the more confidence he'll get, and that was a world-class finish.
It was, and I like what I see from Benjamin Sesko. You watch someone mentioned there, Gyökeres, and he looks shite. Yeah. And you look, what the fuck's that about? You never think that was Sesko.
No.
When you watch him, you don't think, he's poor. You watch him, you think, all right, maybe a couple of his finishes could have been better, whatever, but his touch is mint, his movement's good, he's obviously strong and quick, and you think, and he knows where sort of the best positions to take up and stuff. You think there's a player there. Yeah. You can see he's a top quality player. I don't have that sort of fear around him. Do you know what I mean? You think sometimes, and again, I don't want to keep I'm digging out Xerxes and Hoyland, but sometimes last season especially, you're watching them, you're thinking, what's going on here? We're in trouble here if we're relying on these guys. I don't feel like that with Benjamin Sesko, and I agree with you. I think it's always difficult coming into Premier League first season, especially when the manager changes. Already he's played under 3 United managers, which is kind of ridiculous considering it's only February, but it's where we are. And I think he's done well, and he's scored goals for all 3 of them as well. Let's not forget that. I'm going to wrap it up there. Look, we're not going to get the bunting out for a draw against West Ham, but it is 13 points from 15 for Michael Carrick. It's not too shabby.
Unbelievable.
That, come on.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Me and you were sat here not long ago moaning about we'd drawn at home against all sorts and how things were going wrong and the manager's under pressure and all this other stuff. And we've got in a position now where we're sort of kind of deflated that we've only won 4 and drawn 1 out of 5. And I know people are losing their mind over Frank's Barnett, but there's bigger fish to fry than that. I think we're in a very strong position. We're still on for Champions League football. And the fact that Chelsea were 2-0 up against Leeds as well, let's not forget, and drew 2-2, that's a far worse result than what Manchester United have just achieved. So, look, not great, but reasons to be cheerful, least of all, Benjamin 100%. Sesko and his finishing. Always a pleasure, Joseph. Go and check him out on the Sloppy Joe's podcast. That's been Joe Smith. I'm Jay Moy. Don't forget as well, check out the merchandise. There's a link in the description for that. This has been a review. Manchester United drawing at the London Stadium, but Michael Carrick remains undefeated and we're still on for Champions League football thanks to Benjamin Sesko. I'll leave it there.